I begins thousands of years ago, long before modern borders or nations existed. In the heart of South Asia, where the great rivers Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna flow and merge, lay a land of unmatched fertility, ancient Bengal. The annual floods of these rivers deposited rich silt, creating some of the most fertile soil on Earth. This natural abundance gave rise to early farming communities, who cultivated rice, wheat, and barley and built small villages along riverbanks. Over time, these settlements grew into organized societies with structured trade and administration. The Wari Bateshwar civilization. Among the earliest known urban centers in this region was Wari Bateshwar, located near modern-day Narsingdi, Bangladesh. Archaeologists have discovered fortified walls, storage pits, terracotta ornaments, and even silver punch-marked coins, suggesting that Wari Bateshwar was an advanced trading city over 2,500 years ago, possibly dating back to the pre-Mauryan period, around 400 BCE or earlier. This city is believed to have been part of an ancient trade network connecting Bengal to Southeast Asia, China, and the Middle East. Excavations have revealed semi-precious stone beads, iron tools, and pottery, indicating both local craftsmanship and international trade through river and sea routes. The people and their way of life. The people of ancient Bengal were skilled farmers and artisans. They used iron plows to cultivate rice, a crop that became central to Bengal's identity for millennia. Craftsmen specialized in pottery, metalwork, jewelry, and textiles, showing a refined sense of art and technology. Trade routes along the rivers allowed them to exchange goods like spices, muslin, ivory, and beads with distant regions. Religious artifacts suggest that early Bengalis practiced animism, later evolving into Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism as these faiths spread across the Indian subcontinent. Temples and stupas began to appear, marking Bengal's growing connection to the spiritual and philosophical movements of ancient India. Cultural and political growth. By around the 4th century BCE, Bengal had become part of the Mauryan Empire, under the rule of Emperor Ashoka, one of India's greatest leaders. Through Ashoka's reign, Buddhism spread across Bengal, influencing art, architecture, and culture. The Pundravardhana region, modern Bogra and Rajshahi areas, became a major Buddhist center, with monasteries, stupas, and scholars who contributed to ancient learning. As centuries passed, Bengal developed its own regional kingdoms, including the Vanga, Samatata, and Pundra realms, each with distinct cultures and governance systems. Ancient texts and inscriptions mention Bengal as a prosperous and independent region, respected for its trade, art, and scholarship, connections beyond borders even. In these early times, Bengal was not isolated. Maritime traders from Bengal sailed through the Bay of Bengal, reaching Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, and even Indonesia. Some historians believe that Bengali merchants and monks helped spread Buddhism to Southeast Asia. These exchanges made Bengal a bridge between South and Southeast Asia, influencing both trade and culture for centuries to come. Closing lines for this section. Narrator. So long before modern Bangladesh came into being, the roots of its civilization were already deep, nourished by the rivers, strengthened by trade, and enriched by culture. The story of ancient Bengal is not just the beginning of a nation's history, it's the foundation of a 1,000-year legacy of creativity, resilience, and connection with the world. As Bengal's early civilizations flourished, a new age dawned across the Indian subcontinent, the Age of Empires. Powerful kingdoms rose and fell, each leaving their mark on Bengal's land, culture, and people. It was during this era that Bengal truly began to connect with the great civilizations of ancient India. The Mauryan Empire. Bengal joins a superpower around 321 BCE. Chandragupta Maurya founded the Mauryan Empire, uniting most of the Indian subcontinent under one rule. Bengal, then known as the regions of Vanga, Pundra, and Samatata, became part of this vast empire. Under Emperor Ashoka the Great, 3rd century BCE, the Mauryan rule reached Bengal's heartlands. Ashoka's reign brought peace, organization, and Buddhism to Bengal. He sent Buddhist monks to spread teachings of compassion and morality throughout the region and beyond, even to Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. Archaeological findings, including Ashokan inscriptions found near Mahasthangar in Bogra, modern-day Bangladesh, prove Bengal's significance within the Mauryan realm. This was a time of administrative order and spiritual transformation, when Bengal began to emerge as not just a fertile land, but a center of faith, trade, and learning. The Shunga and Kanva dynasties after the fall of the Mauryas. Bengal came under the Shunga and Kanva dynasties. Though these empires were smaller, Bengal retained its importance as a gateway to the east, linking India's interior to the Bay of Bengal and beyond. Local rulers gained more autonomy, developing unique styles of art and governance that blended imperial influence with regional creativity. The Gupta Empire, Bengal's golden age by the 4th century CE, the Gupta Empire rose to power, an era often called the Golden Age of India. Under rulers like Chandragupta II and Samudragupta, the empire expanded eastward, bringing Bengal into its cultural and political sphere. During this time, Bengal experienced unprecedented prosperity. The Guptas were great patrons of art, science, mathematics, and literature. Ancient Bengal became a thriving region of education and trade. Its universities, such as Pundravardhana, attracted scholars, monks, and students from faraway lands. Bengal's artisans crafted exquisite terracotta sculptures, metal idols, and stone carvings, many of which survive today in archaeological sites. The region's economy boomed through riverine and maritime trade, exporting textiles, spices, ivory, and precious stones. The rise of local kingdoms as the Gupta Empire weakened in the 6th century CE. Regional powers began to emerge once more. Independent Bengali dynasties such as the Gauda kingdom rose to prominence, with rulers who promoted Buddhism, Hinduism, and local traditions. The coexistence of multiple faiths, Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain, shaped Bengal's identity as a land of tolerance and diversity. Temples and monasteries began to appear across the countryside, while Sanskrit and early Bengali inscriptions started to define the region's cultural identity. The spirit of Bengal narrator. Through centuries of empire and evolution, Bengal remained more than just a province. It was a cultural powerhouse. Its rivers carried not only goods and grain, but also ideas, languages, and beliefs. The foundation for future greatness in art, philosophy, and trade was already being laid. As one empire faded and another rose, Bengal continued to thrive, quietly shaping its own destiny, preparing for the next great transformation. As the ancient empires of India declined, Bengal once again began to stand on its own. Between the 13th and 16th centuries, a new era emerged, one that would transform Bengal into one of the richest, most influential kingdoms in medieval Asia. This was the age of the Bengal Sultanate, a time of power, culture, and prosperity. The arrival of Islam first came to Bengal not through conquest, but through trade and faith. Arab and Persian merchants had been sailing along the Bay of Bengal for centuries, exchanging goods, ideas, and beliefs. Sufi saints, peaceful missionaries, spread Islam's message of equality and compassion among the local people. By the early 13th century, as the Delhi Sultanate expanded eastward, Muslim governors began to establish control over Bengal's fertile lands. Bengal breaks free in 1338. Bengal's history took a bold turn. A powerful governor named Shamsuddin Ilyas Shah declared Bengal independent from Delhi's rule, founding the Ilyas Shahi dynasty. Under his leadership, Bengal became a sovereign sultanate with its own army, administration, and culture. He united the fragmented regions of Gauda, Vanga, and Satgaon, creating a kingdom that stretched from the Himalayas in the north to the Sundarbans in the south. The capital city, Gaur, or Lucknowty, blossomed into a majestic metropolis filled with mosques, palaces, gardens, and learning centers. A golden age of prosperity, The Bengal Sultanate was known throughout Asia for its immense wealth and strategic trade routes. The fertile delta produced abundant rice, sugar, and silk, while ports like Chittagong and Sonargaon became hubs of international trade. Merchants from Arabia, China, and Southeast Asia arrived to buy Bengal's legendary muslin, a fabric so fine that it was once called woven air. Under rulers like Ghiyasuddin Azam Shah and Alauddin Hussein Shah, Bengal reached its cultural zenith. The sultans built magnificent mosques and madrasas, many adorned with intricate terracotta designs that blended Islamic, Persian, and Bengali art styles. Bengal's unique Indo-Islamic architecture flourished. Buildings like the 60-dome Mosque of Begharhat still stand as witnesses to this golden era. Cultural harmony and literature what made the Bengal Sultanate truly remarkable was its religious tolerance and cultural fusion. Muslim rulers respected the region's Hindu and Buddhist traditions, encouraging art, literature, and language. The Bengali language began to flourish, with poets and scholars composing in Bangla, Persian, and Arabic alike. This era saw the rise of Bengali literature, inspired by both Sufi mysticism and Hindu bhakti traditions. Under the patronage of Sultan Hussein Shah, 1493–1519, even the great Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a Hindu saint and founder of the Gaudiya Vaishnavism movement, was respected and allowed to preach freely. It was a time when faith and art coexisted, shaping Bengal's identity as a melting pot of culture, foreign relations, and global fame. The Bengal Sultanate maintained diplomatic ties with China, Arabia, and the Middle East. Chinese explorer Ma Huan, who visited Bengal in the 15th century, described it as one of the most prosperous lands he had ever seen, with thriving ports, rich farmlands, and skilled artisans. Bengal was so wealthy that foreign travelers often called it the paradise of nations. The legacy of the sultans, by the early 16th century, the Bengal Sultanate stood as one of the most powerful independent states in the Indian subcontinent. Its wealth, culture, and tolerance left a lasting mark on the region's identity. But soon, a new power was rising in the north, the Mughal Empire, whose ambitions would once again change the fate of Bengal. Closing lines for this section, narrator. The Bengal Sultanate's legacy still lives on in the art of its mosques, the rhythm of its poetry, and the enduring spirit of its people. It was an age when Bengal shone as a beacon of culture, trade, and unity, a golden chapter in the story of Bangladesh. As the Bengal Sultanate declined in the early 16th century, a new power rose from the north, the Mughals. Under the banner of the Mughal Empire, Bengal would enter a new age of prosperity, art, and global fame. It was during this time that Bengal became known to travelers and traders as the paradise of nations. The Mughal conquest of Bengal in 1576, after the Battle of Rajmahal, the Mughal general Munim Khan, under Emperor Akbar, brought Bengal under Mughal control. It became the Suba of Bengal, one of the richest provinces in the empire. Yet even under Mughal rule, Bengal maintained a strong sense of identity, with local nobles, merchants, and artisans playing a vital role in its success. Dhaka, the jewel of the East during Mughal rule, Dhaka emerged as a major imperial capital. Under the leadership of governors like Islam Khan and Shaista Khan, Dhaka became one of the most magnificent cities in South Asia. Its skyline was filled with mosques, gardens, palaces, and bustling bazaars, while the rivers around it carried boats heavy with silk, muslin, and spices. Travelers from around the world, Persians, Armenians, Portuguese, and even the British, and wrote of Dhaka's grandeur and energy. It was said that to rule Bengal was to rule a kingdom within a kingdom. The muslin of Bengal, one of Bengal's greatest treasures, was its muslin fabric, a cloth so delicate that entire lengths could pass through a ring. Woven by hand along the banks of the Meghna and Shitalaksha rivers, this muslin became the most sought-after textile in the world. European merchants, from the Dutch to the British, competed fiercely to control Bengal's textile trade. Muslin from Dhaka silk from Rajshahi, and jute from the Delta found their way to royal courts in London, Paris, and Istanbul. The fame of Bengal's craftsmanship spread across continents, architecture, and art. The Mughal era also transformed Bengal's landscape with beautiful architecture that blended Persian, Central Asian, and Bengali designs. Structures like the Lal Bagh Fort, Choto Katra, and Sat Gambuj Mosque in Dhaka stand as witnesses to this golden period. The use of red bricks, domes, and terracotta ornamentation gave Bengal's Mughal architecture its unique local flavor. Art and literature flourished as Persian poets. Bengali writers and musicians created a culture of elegance and refinement. The Mughal governors often supported both Islamic and Hindu scholars, creating an environment of intellectual and cultural harmony. Trade and prosperity. Bengal was known as the economic heart of the Mughal Empire. Its fertile delta produced so much rice, sugar, indigo, and silk that it became the empire's primary source of wealth. The Mughal treasury relied heavily on Bengal's exports, and international traders referred to it as the richest province in the world. The city of Murshidabad later replaced Dhaka as the capital in the 18th century, continuing Bengal's reputation for luxury and trade. The Nawabs of Bengal, especially Murshid Quli Khan, built grand palaces and mosques, symbolizing Bengal's prestige and autonomy. The calm before the storm. But while Bengal thrived in wealth and culture, European powers were quietly tightening their grip on trade. The Portuguese, Dutch, French, and British all established trading posts along the rivers. The British East India Company, in particular, began to manipulate politics and commerce, setting the stage for a dramatic change that would soon end Bengal's golden age. Closing lines for this section. Narrator. Under the Mughals, Bengal was more than just a province. It was a global center of art, trade, and innovation. Its cities sparkled, its artisans created wonders, and its rivers carried the lifeblood of an empire. But behind the beauty and prosperity, the winds of colonial ambition were beginning to rise, bringing with them a storm that would change Bengal forever. The 18th century marked a turning point in Bengal's history. After centuries of wealth and glory, the paradise of nations began to fall under foreign control. The same rivers that once carried prosperity now became routes of conquest as the British East India Company set its sights on Bengal. The Battle of Plassey, 1757. The year 1757 changed Bengal forever. The British East India Company, led by Robert Clive, clashed with Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah at the Battle of Plassey. Through betrayal and deceit, the British emerged victorious. It was not just a military victory. It was the beginning of colonial rule in the Indian subcontinent. Bengal, once the richest region in Asia, now became the first jewel in Britain's colonial crown. The loot of Bengal after Plassey, the British East India Company gained control over Bengal's immense resources. They drained its wealth through unfair taxes and trade monopolies. Farmers, artisans, and weavers, once prosperous, were crushed under new systems that favored British merchants. The British forced Bengal to export raw materials and import British goods, destroying local industries. The legendary Dhaka muslin, once coveted by queens and kings, was slowly wiped out, its weavers left jobless and impoverished. Within just a few decades, Bengal's economy collapsed, and famine followed. The Great Bengal Famine of 1770, one of the deadliest famines in history, struck Bengal. Over 10 million people, nearly a third of the population, died of starvation. The British East India Company continued to collect taxes, even as villages burned and fields went dry. Narrator. Emotional tone. A land once called the paradise of nations became a land of suffering. The rivers that once carried gold now carried tears. The rise of Calcutta as the British tightened control, they made Calcutta, now Kolkata, the capital of their growing empire in the east. The city became the nerve center of British administration, trade, and culture. While wealth flowed into British coffers, Calcutta also became the heart of Bengal's intellectual awakening. Western education, printing presses, and new ideas began to spread. giving rise to thinkers, reformers, and revolutionaries. The Bengal Renaissance amid oppression. A new light emerged, the Bengal Renaissance. In the 19th century, Bengali scholars, poets, and reformers began to challenge superstition, social injustice, and colonial authority. Figures like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the founder of the Brahmo Samaj, led movements for education, women's rights, and freedom of thought. This intellectual movement gave birth to a new generation of writers and nationalists, including Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who wrote Vande Mataram, and Rabindranath Tagore, the first Asian Nobel laureate. Their ideas inspired patriotism, unity, and a longing for independence. Partition of Bengal, 1905, but the British feared Bengal's growing political consciousness. In 1905, they divided Bengal along religious lines, separating the Muslim majority east from the Hindu majority west. They claimed it was for administrative convenience. But in truth, it was an attempt to divide and rule. This move sparked mass protests across Bengal, the first major movement against British rule. The outcry was so strong that the partition was reversed in 1911, but the damage was done. The seeds of religious division had been sown, shaping the region's future in painful ways. The spirit of rebellion, throughout the early 20th century, Bengal remained the center of revolutionary activity in British India. Freedom fighters like Khudiram Bose, Prafulla Chaki, and later Subhas Chandra Bose emerged from Bengal's soil, inspiring generations to rise against colonial rule. At the same time, the Muslim League and Indian National Congress gained strength, representing the growing demand for independence and self-rule. Closing lines for this section narrator. Under British rule, Bengal endured unimaginable suffering, famine, exploitation, and division. But it also gave birth to courage, intellect, and resistance. Out of oppression rose a people who refused to be broken, who carried the dream of freedom in their hearts. Bengal was no longer just a land. It had become the soul of a revolution. By the mid-20th century, after nearly 200 years of colonial rule, the winds of change were blowing across South Asia. The call for freedom echoed in every corner of Bengal, but so did the growing divide between Hindus and Muslims, a divide deepened by decades of British divide and rule policies. The year 1947 would change everything for Bengal, for India, and for the world. The partition of British India, as the British prepared to leave, two nations were born, India and Pakistan. Bengal, a land united by language and culture, was split in two once again. West Bengal joined India. East Bengal, with its Muslim majority, became part of the newly formed Pakistan, renamed East Pakistan. At first, many in East Bengal hoped this union would bring equality and progress. But soon they realized that freedom had come with new chains. Nation divided by distance East and West Pakistan were separated by more than 1,600 kilometers of Indian territory, and by deep cultural and linguistic differences. The people of East Pakistan spoke Bangla, while those in the West spoke Urdu. Yet, the government in West Pakistan held almost all the political power, economic control, and military strength. East Pakistan produced most of the country's export earnings, especially through jute and tea, but saw little return in development. Dhaka, once a thriving Mughal city, now struggled under economic neglect. The people of East Bengal began to realize, though they shared a religion, they were being treated as second-class citizens. The language movement of 1952. The breaking point came when Pakistan's leaders tried to make Urdu the only official language, ignoring the fact that the majority of Pakistan's population spoke Bangla. In 1952, students from the University of Dhaka and across East Pakistan rose in protest, demanding the recognition of Bangla as a state language. On February 21, 1952, police opened fire on peaceful protesters, killing several young students, including Abul Barkat, Rafiq Uddin, and Salam. Their sacrifice became a turning point in history. The language movement united the people of East Pakistan, sparking a new sense of national identity based not on religion, but on language, culture, and pride. Today, the world honors their sacrifice every February 24 as International Mother Language Day, declared by UNESCO. The struggle for political autonomy over the following decades, East Pakistan continued to be ignored and exploited by the ruling elite in the West. Political movements grew stronger, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his Awami League, who demanded autonomy and fair representation. In the 1970 general elections, Mujibur Rahman's party won a landslide victory, securing the majority of seats in Pakistan's parliament. But the ruling authorities in West Pakistan refused to hand over power, plunging the country into crisis. The hopes of democracy turned into the flames of rebellion. Operation Searchlight. The dark night on March 25, 1971, the Pakistani military launched Operation Searchlight, a brutal campaign to suppress Bengali nationalism. Dhaka was attacked. Students, civilians, and intellectuals were massacred. Entire towns were burned. Millions fled to neighboring India, seeking refuge from the violence. It was one of the darkest nights in South Asian history, and it ignited a fire that could no longer be contained. The Declaration of Independence in the early hours of March 26, 1971, Bangladesh declared independence. The war for liberation had begun. Led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's vision and carried out by brave freedom fighters known as the Mukti Bahini, the people of East Pakistan took up arms to reclaim their land and their dignity. It was not just a political struggle, it was a fight for survival, culture, and identity. Closing lines for this section. Narrator. For centuries, Bengal had been divided and ruled by outsiders. But now its people stood united once more, not as Bengalis of East Pakistan, but as the proud sons and daughters of a new nation in the making. The soil of Bengal had seen empires rise and fall, and soon it would witness the birth of Bangladesh. Narrator. The night of March 25, 1971, the streets of Dhaka were filled with terror. Operation Searchlight had begun. The Pakistani army unleashed a brutal crackdown on unarmed civilians, students, and intellectuals, a massacre that the world would later recognize as one of the worst atrocities of the 20th century. But even in the face of such horror, the spirit of the Bengali people refused to break. The war begins as cities burned. Leaders of the independence movement went underground. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the leader of the Awami League, was arrested and taken to West Pakistan. But before his capture, his message had already ignited the nation. This may be my last message. The struggle this time is the struggle for our emancipation. The struggle this time is the struggle for our independence. Across the land, people rose up. Teachers, farmers, students, and soldiers, everyone became a freedom fighter. The Mukti Bahini, or liberation forces, were formed to fight against the occupation army. The role of India as the genocide continued. Nearly 10 million refugees fled across the border into India. The humanitarian crisis grew unbearable. India, under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, began providing support to the Bangladeshi freedom fighters, offering training, shelter, and weapons. By December 1971, India joined the war officially, siding with the people of Bangladesh in their struggle for liberation. It was no longer just a regional conflict. It became a war for justice and humanity. 9 months of struggle for 9 long months. The people of Bangladesh endured unimaginable suffering. Villages were destroyed, families were torn apart, and countless lives were lost. Yet hope never died. From the forests of Sylhet to the rivers of Khulna, from the plains of Rajshahi to the streets of Dhaka, the cry for freedom echoed everywhere. Joy Bangla. Victory to Bengal! Women played a vital role too, as nurses, couriers, and even combatants. Artists, poets, and musicians kept morale alive through songs of resistance and hope. December 16, 1971, Victory Day, then at last came the day the world would never forget. On December 16, 1971, after weeks of intense battle, the Pakistani army surrendered to the joint forces of India and Bangladesh in Dhaka's racecourse ground. The war was over. The dream was realized. The new nation of Bangladesh was born, carved from the courage, sacrifice, and unity of its people. The cost of freedom, the victory came at a heavy price. An estimated 3 million people lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands of women were victims of violence. Entire towns were left in ruins. But amidst the ashes, a new light emerged, a free and independent Bangladesh, standing proud before the world. The return of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in January 1972. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was released from prison in Pakistan and returned to a hero's welcome in Dhaka. As he stepped onto the soil of his homeland, millions chanted his name. The father of the nation had returned to lead his people, not as East Pakistanis, but as Bangladeshi's closing narration narrator. From centuries of colonization and countless struggles, the people of Bengal had risen to claim their destiny. Their journey was written in courage, their independence earned through sacrifice. The world watched as a new flag was raised, red for the blood of martyrs, green for the fertile land, and a golden sun for hope and freedom. On that day, a nation was reborn, and its name was Bangladesh. The guns had fallen silent, but the scars of war ran deep. In 1972, Bangladesh stood free, yet broken. Cities lay in ruins, bridges destroyed, and millions were homeless. The challenge ahead was monumental: to rebuild a country from the ground up. The dream of a new Bangladesh. At the heart of this new beginning stood Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the man who had led his people to freedom. To his followers, he was more than a leader. He was Bangabandhu, the friend of Bengal. He envisioned a nation based on democracy, equality, and social justice. Under his leadership, Bangladesh adopted a new constitution in 1972, built on 4 pillars: nationalism, socialism, democracy, and secularism. The people were filled with hope, determined to turn war-torn fields into fertile farms, ruins into schools, and despair into progress. Challenges of a new state, but rebuilding was never easy. The war had shattered infrastructure, the economy was in crisis, and famine loomed. In 1974, a devastating famine struck the nation, claiming countless lives and testing the young country's resilience. Bangabandhu faced growing political pressure and economic hardship. In an effort to stabilize the nation, he introduced a one-party system under the Baksal, Bangladesh Krishak Shramik Awami League, in 1975, hoping to bring unity and discipline. But on August 15, 1975, tragedy struck. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and most of his family were assassinated in a military coup, a dark day that shocked the nation to its core. The father of the nation was gone, and Bangladesh was thrown into political turmoil. Years of instability. After Mujib's death, Bangladesh entered a period of military rule and political instability. Leaders rose and fell in quick succession. Amidst the uncertainty, the nation's identity and democracy were tested again and again. In 1977, General Ziaur Rahman took power. He introduced new political reforms, promoted rural development, and opened Bangladesh's economy to the world. Under his leadership, Bangladesh began to rebuild diplomatic ties, joining international organizations like the United Nations in 1974 and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. But Zia's rule also ended abruptly. He was assassinated in 1981, plunging the nation into yet another phase of military rule. Rise of people's power. By the late 1980s, Bangladesh was weary of military regimes. Amid growing demands for democracy, General Hussein Mohammad Ershad, who had taken power in 1982, faced widespread protests led by students, political parties, and citizens. The cry for freedom once again echoed through the streets, this time not from a foreign ruler, but from within. Finally, in 1990, a people's movement forced Ershad to resign, paving the way for the return of democracy. Closing narration. Narrator. The early decades of Bangladesh were filled with pain, loss, and struggle, yet also with unmatched resilience. From the ruins of war, the nation began to rise. Its people, once refugees and victims, became builders, dreamers, and innovators. They had survived colonization, partition, and war. Now they were learning to govern themselves, united, under one flag, one language, and one dream, to create a prosperous and just Bangladesh. The 1990s marked a new dawn for Bangladesh. After years of military rule, the people had reclaimed their right to democracy. The streets that once echoed with cries for independence now rang with calls for progress, education, and opportunity. From the ashes of war and instability, a modern Bangladesh was beginning to rise. Return of democracy. In 1991, Bangladesh held free elections, restoring parliamentary democracy. Two political forces emerged as dominant: the Awami League, led by Sheikh Hasina, daughter of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, led by Khaleda Zia, widow of President Ziaur Rahman. For decades, these two leaders symbolized both hope and fierce political rivalry, shaping the nation's politics for years to come. Despite tensions, the democratic process slowly took root. Economic growth and development, as the 21st century approached, Bangladesh began achieving what few had imagined possible. The nation, once described as the bottomless basket by foreign observers, became a model of economic resilience. The ready-made garment industry turned Bangladesh into one of the world's largest clothing exporters, employing millions, especially women, and empowering families across the country. Microfinance initiatives, pioneered by Dr. Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank, revolutionized rural finance and earned Bangladesh the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. Agriculture modernized, education improved, and health indicators soared. Social. Progress. Bangladesh made remarkable strides in women's empowerment, child health, and education. Once plagued by poverty and natural disasters, the country achieved some of the fastest poverty reduction rates in South Asia. Girls' education became a national priority, and women entered the workforce in record numbers, leading households, businesses, and even the government. Programs in renewable energy, like solar home systems, brought light to millions of rural homes, symbolizing hope and progress. Global recognition. By the 2010s, Bangladesh had become a rising star in the developing world. The nation achieved middle income status and was celebrated for its progress toward the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Dhaka, once a war-torn city, transformed into a bustling megacity, alive with ambition, culture, and creativity. Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, artists, and innovators began making their mark on the global stage. Challenges on the road. Ahead yet, the journey hasn't been without challenges. Bangladesh faces the growing threats of climate change, flooding, and rising sea levels that endanger millions living in coastal areas. Political polarization and corruption continue to test the nation's institutions. Still, the spirit that won independence in 1971 continues to guide its people, a belief that unity, hard work, and courage can overcome any obstacle. A nation with a vision under Vision 2041, Bangladesh aims to become a developed nation, driven by technology, education, and sustainable growth. Mega projects like the Padma Bridge, Dhaka Metro Rail, and new economic zones signal a country boldly stepping into the future. From the fields of Rangpur to the skyscrapers of Dhaka, the message is clear. Bangladesh is no longer defined by struggle, but by strength. Closing narration. Narrator. In just over 5 decades, Bangladesh has achieved what once seemed impossible. It has risen from the ruins of war to become a beacon of resilience and progress. A land where rivers flow through the heart of its people, where every struggle births new strength, and where every dream carries the echo of its past. Joy Bangla, victory to Bengal. From the ancient cities of Wari Bateshwar to the bustling skyline of modern Dhaka, Bangladesh's story is one of courage, creativity, and unbreakable spirit. A land once marked by floods, famine, and war now stands as a symbol of resilience and hope, proof that determination can rewrite destiny. The soul of a nation. At the heart of Bangladesh lies something far greater than borders or politics. It's the strength of its people. Farmers who work the fertile delta with pride, mothers who dream of educating their children, workers in factories, teachers in classrooms, artists and innovators, all united by one language, one heritage, and one dream. Their spirit, the spirit of Bangla, continues to define who they are and what they can become. Culture, language, and identity. Bangladesh's culture is a river that flows through time, from the poetry of Rabindranath Tagore and Kazi Nazrul, Islam to the songs of Lalon Fakir and the modern beats of Dhaka's youth. The Bangla language, once fought for with blood in 1952, is now celebrated across the world on International Mother Language Day. It is a reminder that identity is worth fighting for, and that words can be stronger than weapons. A future of innovation. Today, Bangladesh is a nation on the rise. Its young generation, tech-savvy, creative, and ambitious, is shaping the future. Startups are booming, renewable energy is expanding, and digital transformation is connecting millions. Projects like Digital Bangladesh and Smart Bangladesh 2041 aim to empower every citizen, turning the dreams of independence into the reality of innovation. Global compassion beyond its borders, Bangladesh's heart beats for humanity. The nation opened its arms to millions of Rohingya refugees, proving once again that empathy and compassion are part of its soul. In global forums, Bangladesh speaks as a voice for climate justice, fighting for vulnerable nations and a fairer world. Closing narration. Narrator. 50 years ago, Bangladesh was born from fire and sacrifice. Today it stands tall, not as a tale of tragedy, but of triumph. Every wave of the Padma River carries memories of struggle and songs of victory. Every flutter of the red and green flag reminds the world that even the smallest nation can have the strongest spirit. From ancient Bengal to the modern republic, the story of Bangladesh is not just history, it is inspiration. Narrator, final lines. This is Bangladesh, a land of rivers, resilience, and endless dreams. A nation that rose from pain to promise. And a people who will forever say with pride, Joy Bangla, victory to Bengal.